Konan from the Akatsuki. Konan was a girl who grew up in the Hidden Rain Village. It was sad. War-torn nation between, the five great nations. During every great ninja war, there was a lot of casualties, and, she lost her family. But she met Yahiko, and her and Yahiko were running around together for a while. Then they met Nagato, who's a boy who covered his face. She was like, you come with us. We're surviving, just us. We steal food to survive, however we can. So that's what they did. But eventually they met, the Sani. Orochimaru wanted to kill them, but then Jiraiya was like, no, I'll stay here with these kids and teach them jutsu. That happened. And Konan, grew attached to Jiraiya. He showed them kindness. But he was only there to teach them ninjutsu so they could survive in the Rain Village better. She learned origami and paper art. Paper bomb jutsu. She had a special type of jutsu. I guess you could call it a KK Genkai of sort. But she developed those skills even after Jiraiya left. And she became a pretty damn good Konoichi. But that was also then short-lived. They established the Akatsuki that was originally established wasn't established to, do shit like hunt till beast. Their goal was to, free the Rain Village from Hanzo's, tyranny. Yes. Hanzo's tyranny. God damn. Free the Rain Village from Hanzo's tyranny. Right? So after that happened, right? But after that happened, right? Hanzo, they were trying to battle against Hanzo. He was the one running the Rain Village, and, people were, starving, hungry, orphans, like, Yahiko and Konan and Nagato, right? And their village was all fucked up. So they were all fucked up, right? But then, things got even worse because she got kidnapped by Hanzo. And he was like, I want the leader of the Akatsuki to kill himself. Yahiko, take this knife and kill yourself. Kill yourself or I'll kill this girl. And, she was like, don't do it. Because she didn't want to see them die. Yahiko ran into the blade because he didn't want, Konan to die. Nagato loved both of his friends. He saw one of his friends, Yahiko, die. The Renegon was unleashed that minute. Nagato also changed his life forever, too. He created the first, pain puppet, after, fighting against Hanzo's men. Hanzo did get away that day. But then Obito approached them again. See, Obito had already approached them in the past. But they had, weren't hearing it because Yahiko was like, no, we're trying to, bring peace to our village. You're doing other shit. You promised us power, but we already have the power to do that. But they, reapproach reapproach them. They formed the new Akatsuki, which was the one we know as Tail Beast Hunters, who were trying to, do things for Obito's ends, which was actually Madara's ends, which, and we know. But Obito, was like the true leader of this Akatsuki. Nagato was following his, way, the way that he convinced them, the infinite Tsukuyomi would allow the whole world to be in peace and all kind of extra stuff, right? That wasn't true. But the way he was stating it was like, yes, everybody's dreams could become a reality with the power of nine-tailed beast, 10 tails, and using its power to bring that about. Bringing destruction to the world while also creating, peace, like, at the end of it all. Is what he, was, kind of preaching to them, and they sounded it. It sold them. So they were like, okay, they went and they recruited other Akatsuki members. She approached Sasori, of the Red Sand, who killed the third Kazakage and then left the village. She was like, your powers are useful to us. You can catch a tail beast. You killed one of the Kage and shit. So that was, how they, found him. They found Hidan. They found, Itachi and everybody else. She went on hunts with Pain. They hunted down Utakata, but she wasn't there. She was just sitting in the background. Eventually, Jiraiya came back to the Rain Village after years of being, gone. Shit was different, Lady Angel and Lord Pain. He was like, what? He was following leads on the Akatsuki, that their home or their leader was living in the Rain Village. He started putting two and two together pretty quickly when he saw Konan again. Konan was fighting against Jiraiya. She was like, you left us to die. We had to do this. This is how we're going to bring about a new world, and you let us down. That type of thing. But then she backed off, and then Pain killed Jiraiya. She didn't initially feel bad because she felt as though this plan that the Akatsuki was doing was correct. She then went to the Hidden Leaf Village, and she helped Pain, destroy the Hidden Leaf Village. She put paper on people's mouths. They couldn't breathe, and she killed a lot of people. Believing that her cause was right. She, did that. She summoned all the Pain to Konoha. But she was with Nagato too. She understood Nagato was fueling Pain, 6 bodies, with his chakra. And that's taxing on Nagato, especially when fighting against Naruto Uzumaki, who has large chakra reserves himself, both being, Uzumakis. But Naruto has extra too because he has the Nine Tails. Even though he has the Rinnegan, she was like, don't push yourself too much. And he was. The Nine Tails forced him to, he had nosebleeds and all kind of shit. She was like, don't do it. Naruto ended up defeating all the Pains. He tracked down Nagato. Konan was there for their conversations, their talks. Naruto taught no jutsu Nagato. Where'd you, you had your dream, but then it became somebody else's, plaything, and you ended up, not doing what you wanted to do. You had the power to be, essentially what I am, but you wanted to not do that. And then Naruto was like, you know what? You're right. I shouldn't have followed that guy. I should have just, did what I was, intending to do to save my people, the Rain Village. I had the power to do that, but I got lost along the way, doing all this extra stuff for, Madara, the guy in the mask. So then he, brought everybody else back to life using running rebirth, but he killed himself too in the process because it's a lot of people he had to bring back to life. Not, goddamn, Konan brought his body back to the Hidden Rain village where she was for a while. Then one day Obito shows up and he's like, I want Nagato's eyes. I need them because I'm starting a war. And you should be with me too because you still have the Akatsuki rope. Why did, Nagato betray me and other things? She was like, he remembered Jiraiya and everything that I taught him. He did calls to Naruto and what Naruto told him, we weren't ever supposed to follow you. We had dreams to rebuild this village that we call home. You played games with us. You deceived us. You played games with our hearts and shit. A bit. And he was like, oh, well, I still need those eyes. So they ended up fighting each other. But this is where she dies, but it was still, kind of a fitting ending for her because she died, with, in the land of rain where, Nagato and Yaiko were laid to rest. She was laid to rest there too. But she did damage Obito, with 6 billion paper bombs. He was forced to use Izanagi, one of the secret techniques of the of the Uchiha clan. He was forced to use that technique to survive the attack. Because he could have died too. He was caught off guard. Obito was. But unfortunately for her, he knew of a lot more jutsu than she thought. And she died that day. But she was, the only female in the Akatsuki. She had a unique Kekkei Genkai, the origami paper arts. 6 billion paper bombs planned for a guy like Obito. That was a smart move, but she didn't do her research too well. But that's the life of Konan as told by Darius the Green Angel.